Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Jeff Gibby here at MetaStock. Good to hear you. Thanks for coming tonight. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? And you know your favorite part is right here. Today's demonstration is designed to instruct you on using MetaStock and the accompanying software plugins. It's not a recommendation to buy or sell, but rather guidelines to interpreting and using specific indicators and features within the software. The information, software, and techniques presented today should only be used by investors who are aware of the risk inherent in trading. MetaStock shall have no liability for any investment decisions based on the use of the software, any trading fees, or any information provided in connection with the company. That's Roy's favorite part as well, so I hope you enjoyed it. Roy's a veteran to our trading room right now, so he's come in, he's done quite a few different classes with us. They're always good, they're always informative. Roy, I know you're on, I can hear you. What do you want to tell us about yourself?
Well, I've been trading ever since the beginning of the online trading era. And I remember how I started because I was working in publishing, and I went into the controller's office, and he was day trading instead of doing his job, and he was actually making enough day trading to earn his kids' tuition. He was sending them through college. So I said, this is something I should look into. This was about, I'd say, somewhere around 1989, 90 or something, and been trading ever since. I've been consulting for a number of trading education providers for the past 15 years or so, and went out on my own about a year and a half ago with a site called steadytrader.com, and we have our own systems that we teach there as well. Cool. And I'm a big fan of MetaStock, but that's obvious.
All right. Well, you should have the screen control. I'm going to do what I normally do and just stop talking and get out of the way. So.
Okay, can you see me?
I can see it.
Okay, great. So thanks everyone for coming.
With that, I'll let you go.
Okay. Thanks for coming, everybody. And we have, I think, a pretty interesting seminar today. It's about how to pinpoint winning signals. And again, I'll just go over the brief version of the disclaimer, just that I am not a broker or certified financial planner, and all the posted results are illustrations based on simulated historical trade results. And of course, past performance on any trading system is not indicative of future performance. The information presented here is solely our opinion to use for your own explorations. So today's agenda is we're going to talk about the trap of too many signals and how to pinpoint the winning signals, because I think it's a common issue that a lot of traders have. They can generate lots of signals, and MetaStock makes it easy to generate signals, buying signals for stocks. But we're going to talk about how to pinpoint the winners from basically the whole pot that you get. At the end, we'll also show you how to get a copy of my ebook, Read This First Before You Buy Stocks. It's a book of research that I did prior to developing our own strategies. You probably find it very interesting. It's about what I call the new rules for the new stock market. So again, I think we just talked about what I've been doing, so we can skip that over. Let's talk about the trap. You know, they always say a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. And where we start is that smart people who get involved in trading with, you know, database tools like MetaStock or any quantitative trading systems, smart people tend to trust what, you know, they understand to be the scientific method, which is that lots of replicated results can be trusted. Now the key here is that the same conditions will produce the same results. In the scientific method, you control the conditions in the laboratory or in a very controlled experiment. The trap in trading comes because the same conditions never occur in trading. Trading is out there in the real world, in fact, in the messy world of the markets, and so the same conditions really never actually occur. That's the beginning of the trap. The second part of the trap, and as I say here, a little more knowledge is even more dangerous, is that all research-based and database trading strategies, they're all based on sampled historical trading data. And smart people tend to trust big data. We all are taught If we know anything about the scientific method or big data, that the bigger the sample, the better the results, the more accurate things generally are. Bigger sample sets usually infer better confidence. So people like to see a big sample. People like to see 4,000 trades, posting a certain type of result that's better than 100 trades. They like to see 10 years better than 1 year of performance. And academic researchers typically use huge samples, in fact, decades worth of data to come up with the formulas for their indicators or their basically trading algorithms. Now here's where the trap gets sprung. The bigger data samples only help the average results. And let me just explain that here, because this actually springs the trap. Sure, you can have 10 years of data, and that makes the averages all the more accurate. But in the real world, when you get actually to trading the rules that come out of these systems or these algorithms, the results always cluster. They just do. So this is just a hypothetical example, from the last, let's say, 5 years. But in 1 year, let's say 2011, you have 1,800 signals, and that varies to a high of 3,200 in 2013. Then it goes back down in 2015. So same system, might be the same buying signal, indicator, whatever you're using, same methodology, but the number of signals varies a lot. And the gain or loss, the average gain or loss in the cluster on a yearly basis might vary considerably. Again, 2013 was a very favorable year, so a lot of systems were very good. Last year was not so hot for a lot of systems. So the point is that the results always cluster, and the averages, in this case, the weighted average here on the average performance in this little set would be 3%. But the reality is that if you were trading, in the last year, the reality was nowhere near the results that you would expect within the comfort of the advertised big data sample. In the past 10 years, XYZ did this well. So this is the trap, is that many years data, thousands and thousands of trades, big trading histories are really, they're a false comfort. They really are a false comfort, and it comes from basically all of our misinterpreting the scientific method. So we're going to talk about how to avoid that trap. And my go-in proposition is that 100% data-based push-button trading is, again, that's kind of a fantasy. I mean, when you think about it, there'd be an awful lot of guys who are being paid 6 and 7 figures on Wall Street, getting paid for nothing if you could just push a button like the guy in the Jetsons and come up with all the best trades. And yet we all want to believe that there's push button trading and you just click, bing, here's the signal, go. So we're going to talk about how to avoid the trap, and the way you avoid the trap is by acknowledging that push button trading is just a fantasy and learning how to exercise good judgment in kind of a methodical way. So we're going to talk about how to pinpoint the best signals. You can certainly generate a boatload of good signals by pushing a button, but we're going to learn how to pinpoint the best with a consistent methodology to make the judgment call, which is really what professional traders do. They get the reports, they get all the stuff from the computers, they get the range of options, but at the end of the day, the guy with the P&L responsibility on the account, the guy whose head is on the line, is going to make a judgment call that is not based on pushing a button and just looking at a printout or looking at a computer screen. So this is our methodology that we use. We use this in our own system called the green light trading system, and we found it works very well. We use 3 steps to pinpoint the best signals. And the steps are, first looking at the signal history, then looking at the current performance, and third, current events. So you have basically 3 types of filters here. You basically, with the history, you're going to knock out signals without a good signal history, and we'll define what that is. If the current performance isn't very good, you'll knock out some of those signals, and if what we call the current events, and I'll explain that in a minute, if they're not good, you can knock out even more signals. So the point is, it's kind of like sequential filtering, like you see on the vodka bottle, triple distilled. We're going to distill any set of signals we get from any methodology, any system, any charting basically charting methodology you'd like to use, we distill it 3 times. First by looking at the history, then by the current performance, and then with current events. And what you end up with is basically a small group of the most accurate signals. So when we look at signal history, we take a page out of what is known in business as RFM. The formula is known by everybody from Amazon to you name it, anybody in commerce. And it's recency, frequency, monetary. What that means is that recent signals are more important than older signals. Frequent signals are a good thing, and the monetary value of the signal, in other words, did the signal in the past trade for a decent amount of gain? These are important. So let's look at recency. One of the ways we avoid the trap of big data is to only look at the last 2 to 3 months max. Typically, really, we only go back 2 months. So whatever you're using, whether you're looking at lines crossing on a chart or a buy signal that comes out of a technical indicator, we basically, and we use MetaStock to do this because it's very easy, we look at the history of when did this same signal happen in the past for this particular issue. And what you'll find, and you may have found this in your own trading, you find out very quickly that some signals work on some stocks, on some issues, on some ETFs, and some you can go back for the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months and you see the signal never worked. It never produced a good trade. I don't pretend to know why that is, but I do know that is the way it is. Sometimes you look at a signal and you can go back the past 2 months and you'll see, gee, all the signals resulted in good trades. So that's what this is about. But we only go back the last 2 or 3 months, again, because there's a whole trap of big data. We don't really care about how this signal performed even a year ago. The markets are changing so quickly, just the structure of the markets, and everything from geopolitical events to the percent of the different institutions and people engaged in the market, to government regulations changing. Everything is changing very quickly. So we only go back 2 or 3 months and look, did this same signal, the same methodology perform well? And again, the most recent is the most important. That's the thing to remember. What has this, in other words, to be kind of trite about it, what has this signal done for this stock lately or this ETF? Now, frequency comes into play. You'd like to see 2 or 3 signals in the last 2 or 3 months. Then you're seeing, well, this is a little bit better. If you only see 1 signal in the last 2 or 3 months, you can't really have that much confidence if it was a good signal or a bad signal. So you do like to see, hopefully, 2 or 3 signals in the last 2 or 3 months, at least 2. If you only see 1 signal in the last couple of months, it's kind of hard to really make a value judgment using this step. And finally, monetary, it's the gains from the prior trades of this signal. Are they worth the effort? Do they meet your strategy targets? And that really depends on the size of your average buy, what kind of gain targets you're looking for. But basically, you have to see that the signal resulted in a trade that more than covered your commissions, more than covered the cost of your time and energy, and it really fits in with your goals. So that's the formula, RFM, recency, frequency, monetary. And that's the first step, signal history. Now, if the signal doesn't meet these criteria, you can knock it out. If it does, you can go to the next step. And the next step would be current performance. So we're big believers that at the end of the day, the stock market is an auction, and the only thing that matters is price, action, and volume. That's what sets the price of every single stock. It's not the news. The news is basically a force that acts on price, action, and volume. It's not the fundamentals, but at the end of the day, whatever happens for those other influences comes down to price, action, and volume. And what we use in step 2 is basically to evaluate the order book, which shows you the price, action, and volume, with the MetaStock OBV indicator. That's the on-balance volume indicator. It's a very simple indicator. You just drag it onto the chart. And to keep it very simple, the way we look at it, it just shows is money accelerating in or out of this particular stock or ETF. I use the word accelerating because that includes the volume aspect. It's not just is money flowing in or out, but is it accelerating? And the OBV looks like this. It's the green line here, and you pull it down, whatever chart you're looking at on MetaStock, you can just pull it down onto the chart and overlay it. Now we have a buying signal here. This just happens to be from our strategy, an RMO buying signal with green light. But what you see is that at the night that we're evaluating the signal at the end of the day, the curve of this OBV line, this green line here, is very steep up. So basically this says money is flowing in. And this is kind of a real time, the way we look at it. This is what happened that day. Is the signal good? Well, it sure seems good because money is starting to flow into this. And in fact, the slope of this curve is a little softer here and it gets steeper there. And then you can, so to us, that's basically confirms the signal. Now you can see how the signal tracks as the price goes up. But what we're looking at is what does this curve look like right here when we're evaluating the signal. Here's another one. Again, the buy signal is here. We pull down the OBV and we got this green line. And you can see in this case, for several days, at a very steep slope. So it makes you feel pretty good about the fact that this is an actual trend happening, that this signal is real, it is going to go up. There's a lot of actual order book pressure, and it continued, again, right here, right up to the time of the signal, when the signal was generated. So that's how we use the OBV, just to basically corroborate the signal. If the slope was negative, like this, going down at the time of the buy signal, then we wouldn't take the signal. So we basically look at the slope, and steeper is better. That's the beauty of a chart. It just makes the math all simple. We like to see a 45-degree line here, 45-degree angle, but steeper is better. And in general, the steeper the curve of this OBV indicator, the more confidence you can have in the signal. So that is the second step. The second step is basically evaluating the current, what we call the current performance. Now, the third thing we do is we evaluate current events. And this is perhaps the one where a lot of traders can get lost, and it's certainly the one where the media spends all their time. And we acknowledge that media buzz causes what we call data drift. Back to my point earlier that there's no such thing as push-button trading. It's true, and what happens is that the media has a huge impact on buying behavior, and it pushes people in and out of stocks. And what we call that is data drift, or it creates basically false signals. So after our signals have passed the first two tests, after they've shown a good signal history based on the RFM model, after they've shown a good current, the past day with the order book showing that there's money flowing into this issue, into this symbol, then we want to see, is there any reason that this signal has been fooled? Has the data been fooled by something that happened in the media? Now, like I said, it's easy to get lost in this because there's volumes of stuff you can read every day on just about any pick. So we don't pretend to be a financial analyst. We look at 4 unambiguous questions to keep it really simple and just not get lost in this step, because again, it's just very easy to sort of overthink this and to pretend you can have a better insight based on the little bit you read in the financial press. We look at earnings reports, we look at acquisitions, sales, mergers, we look at revenue, we look at costs. And again, we're only looking for bad news. Each of these steps, we're only looking to knock out the weak signals. So with the signal history, we're not really trying to evaluate a good signal history. We're trying to evaluate, is that a bad signal history, and just knock out the signal. Same thing with the current performance. We're looking for if the OBV line does not support the signal. At each step of the way, we're looking to basically cut signals off our plate, so we only take the best ones. And here again, we're only looking for bad news on these 4 factors: earnings reports, acquisitions, mergers, revenue, and costs. And what we mean by that, with earnings reports, it really comes down to looking at earnings reports that happen prior to the signal, because then you can see the market reaction. And very often, a stock will go up anywhere from whatever, 5, 10, 10%, sometimes more, 15% on the day of an earnings report, if it's a good one and an unexpectedly good one. And if this happens just prior to the signal, it's very important to look at what happened in the aftermarket or what happened later in the day. If it happens a day or two before the signal, it's better to evaluate because you can really see, did the market take back the initial burst of enthusiasm? Because that's what so often happens with a good earnings report. The stock blasts up for one day and then it comes back down the next, and people get just caught with their pants down taking a signal on that. So when the earnings report is prior to the signal, you really want to try and just looking at when the earnings report was released, how many days prior to the signal was it, and if it happened basically within the day of the signal, try to look at the after hours and see if the market starts to take it back. But you can get a better sense that the signal is valid if the blast from the earnings report happened a day or two before, and then you'll see if the market took back the gain. It works the other way around too. If the earnings report is negative, a lot of times the stock recovers very quickly. So it's helpful when the earnings report happens prior to the signal. When the earnings report, when you have a signal and it's just prior to an earnings report, then there's really not too much to do with this information, because then you're basically, entering the world of the pundits and the media people, and you're taking a guess, and we really try to stay away from really thinking that we can actually know what the earnings report is going to be before it happens. So this question is helpful when it happens prior to the signal, but immediately post-signal, not so much. Now, M&A activity is generally a good indicator, and it's the usual thing. Acquisitions are generally seen as a negative. No matter how promising they are, the market almost always thinks that that's a negative because it's a risk. If one company is acquiring another, it may sound like the greatest merger since the history of commerce, but the fact is that 9 times out of 10 that'll be seen as a negative. If it's a beneficial merger, if one company is acquiring certain assets that are absolutely rock solid, then it could be a positive. But in general, acquisitions we tend to see as negative. You could also say it's an element of risk. So it tends to say, let's take a closer look at this signal. This is not a supporting indicator. Revenue can be a supporting indicator of a signal when it's in the news, and by revenue we mean hard revenue. Is it a defense contractor? They got a big new contract, or they got some kind of overseas contract. Maybe they're a big manufacturer or hard goods, whatever it is. If a company secures a big new line of revenue that's a publicly announced contract, that's a good thing. FDA approval in biotech, that's 99% a good thing. Launching a new product that sounds really cool, generally not a good thing. Generally risky, and the market will react as such, because new products tend to be big investments, big risks, and the market tends to really not reward those announcements. So that's how we judge revenue announcements, and the same thing, kind of the reverse or the inverse with costs. I think most of you know, layoffs, the market loves layoffs because costs go down. If a company is making a big layoff, the stock price almost always goes up. Store closings, the same thing. Divestitures, the same thing. We had a great trade on GE back last fall when they decided to divest a lot of their real estate holdings. It sounds like bad news, obviously, but whenever the market sees a company getting rid of a fixed cost, ongoing cost line item, the market generally reacts positive. Any significant increase, and as we just noted, there can be significant increases with a new product launch or an acquisition, that's generally seen as a negative. So again, we look at these 4 things: the earnings reports, acquisitions or selling of a division or mergers, revenue and costs. We evaluate them the way I just mentioned, and that's basically the third cut on the signals. So that's it in a nutshell. The signal history, take a few minutes, only look at the recent history, look at it with the recency, frequency, and the amount of the gain on each signal, the current performance, using the MetaStock OBV to get a very quick read. Is the current performance looking good? Is money flowing in or money flowing out? And then the third thing is evaluating current events, but only looking at those four very hard-nosed, very unambiguous questions that we raised here. Basically the earnings reports, M&A, revenue or cost in a very solid way. We don't get into being financial analysts. That's another trap in itself. I could write a book on that, people pretending to be financial analysts. But anyway, we look at those four questions, what we call the current events of the day, and use that for the final cut. We find that this takes, this can take an extra 10 minutes. You might run your scans for your strategy or your stock in 5 minutes, and this step might take 10 minutes. This step takes longer in most cases than the actual step of generating signals. But as I said in the very beginning, there are lots of ways to generate really a lot of pretty good signals. And the question is pretty good is not good enough, especially in this current market. If you want to find the best signals, pinpoint the best signals, it's about using a methodology, and this is one we feel works very well for us, where you actually submit each signal to this basically three-step interrogation to make sure it's solid. That's really all I have to say today. This is a pretty basic stuff, but it's pretty solid. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and take questions now. If you want more information, you can go to steadytrader.com. That's our website. You could learn about the green light trading strategy there. We actually teach this as part of that strategy. This is basically at the end of that strategy. We use this methodology in that strategy to basically evaluate all of our signals. We've been doing this for quite some time and feel it works very well. And if you want to get a free copy of our book, read this first before you buy stock. Just again, go to steadytrader.com. I might want to make it simple for you. You will find links there to download the book. Read this first before you buy stock. It's about 85 pages. There's a lot of good stuff in there and a lot of information about what we call the new stock market that has emerged in the last several months, as opposed to what was going on in prior years. And we do feel that there's a huge difference with what's going on right now compared to what was going on 2 or 3 years ago in terms of the general architecture and dynamics of the stock market. So I'm going to look at my question window now and see if anybody has questions. Feel free to type them in.
We have a rather quiet group today.
We have a quiet group. Yes, we do, Jeff. If you want to get a copy of this, just send me an email at info@steadytrader. How do I like RMO? Here comes one. Somebody woke up. We love RMO. We use RMO in our green light strategy. We teach it in a rather unique way. We use this signal pinpointing the best signal exercise at the end of running our RMO scans. But in general, we think it's probably one of our 2 favorite, if not our favorite, indicators out there. And we especially like it because it was developed in this century, as opposed to so many of the other indicators which really were created 20, 30 years ago.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks, Eddie. I think we'll go ahead and shut down the room right now. Oh, there is another one.
How do we search for the various things? Well, you can learn about that again at our website, the Green Light Trading Strategy. I didn't want to go into that today. Today we're just talking about a methodology that you could use to evaluate any signals that you get from any strategy. So we had a pretty limited scope for today's presentation, and you could use this methodology in any signals you use. But we do use RMO and a couple other things in MetaStock to run our signal scans, and then we submit them to this three-step process that I just outlined.
All right. Thanks, Roy. Thanks for coming, everybody. And we're gonna go ahead and shut down the room. Thanks for coming. We'll see you at the next webinar.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everybody.